Welcome to a new episode of Out from the Horrorbox. I'm your host, Dom, and today we're going to get into some spooky stories again. Let's pour out some of those stories. But first, I want to get into some trailers that have been released recently, some spooky trailers. One really big one, another one that, I really want to talk about. So, let's just get straight into it with Halloween Ends.
Let's go. Come and get me, motherfucker.
So this is the trailer for Halloween Ends, which is the third film in the new Halloween trilogy. I don't know what you would call it. The David Gordon Green trilogy, I guess, is what you would call it. It started with Halloween, which is kind of confusing because it's a direct sequel to Halloween, the one from 1978. Not to be confused with 2007's Halloween, which was directed by Rob Zombie. And then this one is a direct sequel to Halloween Kills, which I know a lot of people are either in favor of, don't like, have problems. I honestly like that. I know that there are some issues with it, but overall, I liked that film. I'm going to get ready to talk about all the Halloweens when we get a little bit closer to the spooky season. So just watch out for that. That'll probably be the big series that comes out after we get done with Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th only has 2 more parts. I'm working on the third part, so the fourth part will probably be done in August, so that by then I'll be able to start on Halloween. But in the meantime, let's get back to Halloween Ends. That trailer, oh my god, guys. So honestly, looks amazing. I don't know how else to put it, because Halloween's one of my favorite horror series of all time. I love the original one so much. It would be up there with Texas Chainsaw, Hellraiser, and Nightmare on Elm Street. It's so good. I love the original one so much. It's just so simple and so, I guess, easy to digest for people, but it's also just the template for so many films to come. And then I can honestly go on so much more about that, but this one just looks so good. I just don't know where else you could take the film. We had learned that it was going to be a time jump between the second film, Halloween Kills, and this one, Halloween Ends. We know Laurie is going to be living with her granddaughter. Obviously, hopefully you've all seen it. This is a spoiler, but her daughter did die in the end of the last film. So she's obviously going to be a little, maybe a little unwell, maybe ready to take down, this evil that's been haunting her. But we do know a little bit more about the story. So this is from the YouTube page that the trailer was released with. It says, after 45 years, the most acclaimed revered horror franchise in film history reaches its epic, terrifying conclusion as Laurie Strode faces off for the last time against the embodiment evil, Michael Myers. In a final confrontation unlike any captured on screen before, only one of them will survive. So Jamie Lee Curtis returns for one last time as Laurie Strode, horror's first final girl, in the role that launched Curtis's career. Curtis has portrayed Laurie for more than 4 decades now, as one of the longest actor-character pairings in cinema history. 4 years after the events of last year's Halloween Kills, Laurie is living with her granddaughter, Allison, and is finishing writing her memoir. Michael Myers hasn't been seen since. Laurie, after allowing the specter of Michael to determine and drive her reality for decades, has decided to liberate herself from fear and rage and embrace life. But when a young man, Corey Cunningham, is accused of killing a boy he was babysitting, it ignites a cascade of violence and terror that will force Laurie to finally confront the evil she can't control once and for all. And there has been some talk from the producers and the director about how the story is probably not going to satisfy a lot of people, especially fans, that it's going to be a little bit different. Obviously, they kind of hint at that with the Corey character and like this. So I wonder if maybe Laurie isn't the main character in this, kind of like with the previous film, because in Halloween from 2018, that one, she was more the focus a little bit. I mean, we were obviously it's an ensemble, but I think the last one tried to show that like the focus is being driven away from her more and more. So they'll probably be pulling away from her more for this one especially. So probably she won't be the main character. It'll have to do with that. But one thing that's interesting in the trailer is if you notice, as Michael's walking up the stairs into that house and he opens the door, the hand that he's using to open the door is whole and complete. And that is his left hand. Now we know that from Halloween that his hand, a couple of his fingers, I think it's the ring and pinky, were shot off by Laurie. And so in the previous one too, he had it bandaged up and he was going around killing a bunch of people. So this hand is intact. So either it's one of two things. Either they're tricking us with the editing and the footage and maybe it's mirrored in some way, or they just forgot to check the hand when they were shooting it, or maybe it'll be removed later or something, or as some other people have pointed out, maybe this isn't Michael Myers at all. Maybe this is someone else. Obviously pretending, but using Michael Myers, that idea of him in a way to not only cause confusion, but also to cause like terror in other people, which would honestly not be too bad of an idea if you could pull it off right. I think it's the same thing with it's the Friday the 13th. It's the new chapter or whatever. I forgot. It's the fifth film where it's not Jason that's going around killing people. It's actually Roy, and we get this. Oh, what? It wasn't him the whole time type of reveal, which, if you did it in a way, could work. But we obviously know Michael Myers is coming back. So maybe there's like a copycat killer using that, and then like Michael Myers does show up, and he's kind of like, oh, I'm the one who's supposed to be doing this stuff. So he goes around killing people again. Who knows, right? But there's some characters that we've never seen that just are there. They're like new to the series. We do get to see the police chief who was in the hospital the last movie. So I don't know. Honestly, it looks pretty good. I'm excited. I'm always excited for Halloween. I love Halloween. Well, I mean the movie and the holiday and that whole type of that season. But I will say that this is getting me pumped. I know that like a lot of people have kind of clocked out from it because of the previous one. Hopefully, this gets them just as pumped for this one. But hopefully, it's good, and hopefully, people will go back and see that Halloween Kills is not that bad of a film. Um, I can't wait to talk about that on here with you guys, especially all the other Halloween films because I love them so much. But yeah, I want to know what you guys think. What are your guys' thoughts on this? Honestly, I can't wait till they start showing a little bit more and we start getting more into it, especially because I mean we're heading straight towards it. I mean it's already right now it's July, so September, so it's only in a couple of months that we got till this movie comes out, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Halloween ends. For our next trailer, let's get into a movie series that I actually like the first two. I haven't seen the third one. I honestly did not want to support it. After learning more about the director, I kind of knew a little bit prior, but I learned a lot more after the second film came out. And so I really did not want to support that person. And I probably won't even mention his name here, but this movie, the trailer is I guess a continuation, but more of like a fresh start, I guess, to kind of get itself away from what the behind the scenes of what the original director of the first films did. This is Jeepers Creepers Reborn.
You ever heard of the Creeper?
A local legend, right? The Creeper comes back every 23 years.
Then what? Can't believe I let you drag me to this.
This is the Coachella of cosplay.
It is time for our Creeper Draw! Our grand prize is an escape room for two. Creeper themed.
Come on, you two.
Are you sure this is where we're supposed to be?
We'll be out there in no time.
What the hell is that?
It's coming. It's a trap.
There's no way out.
Come on!
It's coming.
So what I really like about the trailer is that it is kind of fresh. It is new. It does have a look like a Blumhouse film, I guess is what I would say. But I do like the fresh take that they are going with. That like, okay, it's a local legend of the creeper. People kind of know, and they're like, oh, every 23 years, oh, the creeper comes around. Ooh. And honestly, 23 years is long enough for like a generation to kind of forget about them and to kind of pass into like that's just an old like story that like the grown-ups tell about this. And honestly, like this is a pretty good like idea of setting it up for like, okay, it's like an escape room, but like during I don't know, this festival that's essentially like I guess would be like a Halloween festival, probably is what they're going for. And I think what they're probably going to do is have a more updated version of the creeper, probably have it look a little different from what we've normally seen, especially from the third one. The third one, I know from what I've seen of it, it's a little like more makeup-y looking. It's or fake looking. I don't know how to describe it. But it's not as good as like the first two. So that's why I'm thinking they're going with this one. That's why they haven't shown the creeper, because he doesn't look as hulking as before. But maybe that's just from the shots that we're not really seeing him too well. But yeah, I really do think this could work, and it's a good way to distance itself from, but also to acknowledge that the first films happened. The first, well, three films, or at least the first one, to at least acknowledge that the first one happened. Obviously, they're letting you know that, like, okay, something has happened before to people. I don't think it's been 23 years in real life, or maybe it has since Jeepers Creepers came out. I don't think so though, but still, you get the sense of like, oh, it's a new generation. They're going to have to deal with this thing that they thought was a myth, or not a myth, but like a legend, old wives' tale. And it turns out it's real, and they're having to escape this one location. And I think the way that they're doing it is setting it up pretty good. It looks like it's going to be set in one place. It's not going to be like all over the place. Where I think the second one takes, which I do think it's okay. It's a pretty okay movie, but I do like this idea that, oh, they're trapped in a house with it, right? So honestly, this looks pretty good. Can't wait to see this. I like the idea of like, it's a couple this time. It's not just like, oh, brother and sister. It's not a group of high school kids who see. When they did this in the second film with they're stuck in that bus. It's a little absurd that they're not just like that they didn't just leave at other points, and then there's like the stuff with like the men, the young boys with their like shirts off. It's a little weird, but whatever. Besides all that weirdness, yeah, honestly, I think this could work out pretty good. I think we could see a continuation from this, and we could see kind of like they did with Halloween, honestly, where you're giving a whole new, you're kind of like, it could just be a sequel to the first film, and you start right there, and you get a whole new group of people, generation hooked onto the legend of the creeper. So I can't wait to see, like, hopefully this doesn't do too bad. Maybe it does a little bit okay. Maybe it could be a terrible film, but who knows? I mean, it couldn't be worse than, I think the third one did really poorly. So at least it could be better than that one, right? What's that sound? What are those lights? Today's episode, we're going to be getting into some UFO stories. So do what you need to get into that mood for spooky stories. If you need to turn the lights down, if you need to turn the lights on, but whatever it is, let's get into some unexplainable UFO stories. This episode's first tale is from mailmagazine.com. They have an article about a Minnesota cop who crashed his patrol car into a UFO. On a late August night in 1979, Deputy Sheriff Val Johnson was on patrol in rural Marshall County, Minnesota. The closest town was 10 miles away, and the night was still. The fields around him quiet and empty. Suddenly, Johnson saw a bright light streak across the darkness above him. He grabbed a hold of the wheel of his patrol car and hung a left on State Highway 220. Perhaps the light was a pilot in distress? Either way, Johnson kept racing toward whatever it was. But the light shifted and began to head in his direction. Right at him, in fact. It grew brighter and brighter until he heard glass shatter. The light had entered his patrol car. Everything turned to black, and Johnson lost consciousness. What happened next has remained a mystery for the last 43 years. He later told local reporter Jillian Rice of the Channel 5 Eyewitness News team, quote, "I traveled about a mile, and the light seemed to intercept me, so to speak. Came right up to me. It was painful. The light was extremely brilliant and painful. And I closed my eyes, and I heard the sound of breaking glass. That's the last I remember." For the skeptics at home, Rice ran down all the questions and suspicions they might be entertaining. Johnson was unconscious for 40 minutes before he radioed for help and was taken to a hospital, she explained. A doctor and later an eye specialist confirmed that Johnson had suffered mild welder or flash burns to his eyes. But this wasn't the only curious physical evidence of the event. Even stranger, both Johnson's wristwatch and the electric clock in his patrol car had mysteriously stopped for 14 minutes, she reported. Moreover, Rice added, at the scene of the accident, skid marks showed Deputy Johnson coasted for 80 feet after impact before applying the brakes, noting that the area around the crash site had been searched, but nothing was found. Police considered the notion of a small airplane, but Johnson specifically remembered not hearing any engine noise. Plus, nothing could explain how the two spring-mounted antennas on the patrol car became bent at near perfect 90-degree angles. If it wasn't another car, or a small plane, or a person on a bicycle with a bright headlight, what did Johnson hit? And what could account for the missing 14 minutes on his watch and the patrol car? In subsequent interviews, Johnson attempted to describe in exacting detail everything he remembered. The problem was, it didn't sound like anything you'd find on Earth. For instance, Johnson said in his recorded police interview, "I noticed a very bright, brilliant light, 8 to 12 inches in diameter, 3 to 4 feet off the ground. The edges were very defined." He also described the light hitting him like a 200-pound pillow. In yet another interview about the incident, he again described the mysterious nature of what happened. "I saw a ball of light, I drove toward it, and suddenly it was in the car with me. It's unexplainable and will remain so. I'm happy with my mental stability." Johnson has also been consistent ever since the accident first happened, including when he first regained consciousness and called into dispatch on the car radio. This is a conversation between the dispatch operator and Johnson. Dispatch operator, 407, what is your condition? Johnson, I don't know, something just hit my car. Dispatch, what's your condition? Are you okay? Johnson, something attacked my car. I heard the glass breaking and the brakes locked up. I don't know what's going on. Marshall County Sheriff Dennis Breck led the investigation, and he believed the word of his deputy. I feel that whatever Val told me about the light and the strange incident was true. He reiterated to the media, I don't doubt Val in any way. That said, he still had to investigate. The FAA assisted from their end, reporting that there was no aircraft in the skies above Marshall County at that time. So Breck went a less traditional route and reached out to the Center for UFO Studies in suburban Chicago. An investigator from the center visited the site, examined the car, and ran a battery of tests checking for anomalies of magnetism or radioactivity. He concluded that whatever it wasn't radioactive. It's a mystery, Rice would later tell her news camera. Or as the UFO investigator from Illinois said, it appeared to have been a close encounter of the second kind. After the UFO researcher, Honeywell Labs sent out an engineer in November 1979 to conduct some tests on the metal of the patrol car. They too came to the conclusion that they had no idea what had happened. The car antennas appeared to be bent as a result of high velocity blasts of air, which he determined meant that some sort of electrical thing, or perhaps a force, had caused the impact and resulting damage. The automaker for the patrol car, which was a 1977 Ford LTD, sent out its own engineers to examine the vehicle as well. I have not seen anything like this before, Ford crash investigator Meridian French said. In his report, French wrote that it seemed as if inward and outward forces acting almost simultaneously had slammed into the car. Similarly, the damage from front to back was within a straight line only 1 foot wide. The vehicle has since been preserved as an exhibit at the Marshall County Historical Society, which the Society President Kent Broughton said is definitely the #1 attraction. According to him, the patrol car attracts inquisitive visitors from all over. Some people lay on the floor and look underneath it, he told Roadside America. One time I saw a guy with a black flashlight going over the car. Out of everyone involved, Johnson seems the least impressed by what happened to him that fateful summer night. As he said in past interviews, he'd much rather be done with the incident and focus on the future instead. I looked up at the sky and said, well, shucks, what happened? And then I shuffled on with my life. For a while, of course, he was inundated with media requests, but eventually other stories came along and pushed me off the front page. Thank goodness. Even still, strangers often approach him over the years, wanting to go over everything with him themselves. We'd sit in the backyard with lemonade and talk, he told the Minneapolis Post last October. They tell me what they thought had happened to me, and I'd nod at the appropriate times. Eventually, they'd go away. For his part, Johnson did make peace with what happened, as he told the studio audience in 1980 on the show That's Incredible. Upon reflecting, we've come to the conclusion that perhaps the Creator has made other things we can't readily see or readily identify. And perhaps this is one of the things we encountered on the road. Without a doubt, he'd definitely grown to see the light, whatever the light might have been. So what happened here, right? Was it a UFO? Was it maybe his misunderstanding of, maybe a private plane? But then again, who doesn't report I guess if you were not supposed to be flying that low and you slam into a police car, but wouldn't you at least wouldn't there be some evidence of the plane? Especially when I think it was the automaker, they said that it was only a certain amount of feet wide of the impact force. So I think a plane would cause more damage than that too. I guess it depends on where you're hitting the plane at. So if you're hitting the wing, maybe not causing as much damage. But then wouldn't you be able to see tracks from the wing and see debris from the plane? And then even if it was another car that hit them and ran, wouldn't you be able to tell? I'm pretty sure they can tell when it's a hit and run from a car. So this is pretty strange, honestly. Yeah, it's kind of where someone's been consistent for years about what happened, but not only that, the story hasn't changed, and also they really don't want to be in the spotlight. They kind of are I just want to put it on record, and I want to go home. I don't want people really asking me about it. I don't really want to talk about it. But then they get bombarded with questions, and so they have to go out of their way to explain, what exactly is going or what happened without understanding what it could be. Maybe it was some kind of experimental aircraft, but at the same time, wouldn't then there'd be a federal investigation would have been opened up and been you guys didn't see anything type of thing. I don't know. Honestly, this is really, really weird, really strange. It's one of those ones that there's evidence of, like, not physical evidence of the craft, but evidence that something happened, like that the fact that the patrol car was smashed into, right, like hit. The fact that this guy had, when he was taken to the doctor was like, yeah, this is like percussive force hit him. And then not only that, but the light was so bright, it's like a welder, that's like comparable to like light like that, enough to, just be like a force to knock you out too. It's just kind of crazy when you think about it, because it's like, what is this? What are these? Like, is this where you get to say maybe, okay, maybe it was like something from like another dimension that slipped through, but then again, like, then where'd it go? Did it just slip back again, like damaged? Did it take off and go flying somewhere else? But then, who knows, right? I mean, who's to say this was anything like actually like paranormal? I don't know. Like, this is just so weird because he didn't see anything else. It's not like he saw like strange people get into like this weird shaped thing, and then it's like you're driving along, you see this light, it's like taking off in front of you fast enough for you to have to like put the pedal to the metal, right? Try and catch up to it, but then it just stops and then comes straight at you. Like, what is the purpose of that? Like, what is the purpose of doing this damage to this vehicle? Like, did it think it was a threat? Did it see him as something more than that? I don't know. See, like, there's just so much like strangeness that goes on with this and stories like this, and it's just so crazy to hear these ones, because it puts so much like doubt to rest for like some skepticism, because even like they said, they asked questions that skeptics would ask. They looked for evidence that like skeptics would look for, and when they're told like, oh, these questions you're asking, the things you're looking for, they're not here, like where do you go from there? Like, it's just so strange to think like there is something, and that this could happen at any time too, to anyone, not just like, I mean, obviously this was a police officer, but it's just kind of crazy to think like something's out there. Maybe something is out there, and sometimes like this reminds me of if anyone has recently, hopefully if you're listening to this part and you haven't seen Nope, you should stop listening and skip ahead. But it's like with Nope, like, are these things, it really puts in your mind, are these things sentient by themselves? Like, is this thing that hit it some kind of unknown, like, it's not just like an aircraft, like it's a biological thing that is there and sees him as like a threat, so it attacks and then takes off. You know what I mean? Like, what if it's something like that? It's just so strange when you hear these tales, and this is what makes it interesting, especially like when you hear about like UFOs and cryptids, because it's like, what are their intentions, like beyond just attacking, right? Like, okay, you might be able to say like, okay, maybe it was there to attack him, but why, right? Like with the I want to talk about it a little bit more, and that's probably a good transition to some more stories of unidentified flying objects, or what they're called now, unidentified aerial phenomenon. But like the Phoenix Lights, right? If you live in Arizona or know anything about the Phoenix Lights, they just appeared over South Mountain, and like it came over the valley through from the north, or something. Like the way that the trajectory was, it was seen like in northern Arizona, and then it just showed up. And people say, "Oh, it was flares, it was this, it was that." But when you look at the video and you're like, "That can't just be flares. Like, why are they doing what they're doing? Why are they just staying there? They're not falling." But like, what's the point, right? What's the point to show itself if it's not going to do anything? If it's not going to interact? So hopefully that's got your whistle wet. Let's get into some more stories. Now let's move on to an article from Travel Channel. I know. But is Extraterrestrial Tales curated from Reddit. The first tale is entitled When the Aliens Crashed the Sleepover. When I was about 12, my best friends and I used to sleep out on my friend's trampoline in his yard in the summer. We would gather our bed stuff and bounce around till we got tired, then eventually lay down to go to sleep. One evening, 4 of us were laying on the trampoline talking when we noticed that there was something floating over the woods nearby. We couldn't see it directly, just that it blocked the stars out as it slowly moved. It was just a little higher than the tree tip tops and completely silent. We were just some dumb kids, so we just watched it. Slowly, it drifted until it was directly over top of us. Then suddenly, there was this light that I cannot describe. It was more than blindingly bright. It was disorientingly, crippling bright, like it shone down into you. The next thing I remember, we were all standing inside my friend's house, looking at a sliding glass back door at the object still hovering there, and then it glided away. We were all spooked, but we decided to go back out to go to bed on the trampoline. We were laying there for a while, and the next thing we know, it comes back again and does the same exact thing. And we find ourselves inside looking out the back door. Beyond all reason, we go back outside to bed again. Same thing happens again. We finally decide to sleep inside with the lights on. My friend and I lost touch as we grew up, but when I was 18, I heard one of them was in town. I ran into him at a party one night and pulled him to the side to ask him about the night, as it had bothered me for some time. His response has shaken me to this day. I cannot describe his reaction sufficiently. He looked to the ground and said, "I don't want to talk about it." I was kind of shocked by his response, so I didn't know what to say. He got up and walked out, and I stayed sitting there thinking about what just happened. I got up after a minute to go see if I could find him, but he'd left immediately after. That was it. Haven't seen him or the others, but his response was enough to let me know something strange definitely went down that night. I don't know if I want to remember. For sure, this is definitely a strange one. Why would it cause them to continuously loop back inside? Or, like, what is missing between that time where they were looking at it, bam, inside, go back outside, look at it, inside, go back outside, look at it, bam, inside again, and then cause you to be like, okay, we're done with it. We're not going to keep doing this. We're going to just stay inside the whole time. Honestly, this is kind of a frightening one when you think about it, because it's like, yeah, what is causing that? Did they obviously they lost some kind of time? I mean, and it scared one of them enough to where he obviously remembered something, but does not want to talk about it. Our next story is called The Low Flying Triangle. About 2 years ago, I was in Naples, Florida, with my friend. We were on the porch having a smoke around 11 p.m. I was leaning on the railing when I saw what I thought was a plane in the distance turn towards us. It was flying so low that the front lights blinded us. My friend scrambled for his phone, which turned out to be dead, and I, fearing I would miss it, didn't want to run inside to grab my phone. Though the craft was steadily gliding, it was all happening so fast. As the object got closer, we noticed it was a huge black triangle with 3 huge circular lights on the bottom. It was so close, just above the trees right in front of the building. It was so silent. The only thing making any sound was the trees rustling below the craft. And the huge black triangle turned on a dime right in front of us and disappeared over the tops of the buildings. I wouldn't have believed what I saw if I didn't see it with someone else. Yeah, sometimes it's just as simple as that, where they just appear out of nowhere. They're not here to do anything, I guess. They're just here to observe. I mean, they must be doing something. I mean, right? Because they come close enough for you to see them, for you to understand it's something there and something physical, but then they blind you, or they just turn around and they leave, or they cause time to go weird. Who knows what they're doing? I mean, it could be as simple as they stop, they observe, they leave. That's it. The next story is called Don't Tell Anyone. This is a story of my father's. It happened in 1982 while my father was stationed on a military base in New Brunswick. One night, my father's best friend and his girlfriend left just after dark to go see Tron at a movie theater. About an hour later, the friend and his girlfriend were back at the base. The car pulled in, and my father immediately noticed that it was damaged pretty badly and covered in several different colors of paint. My father asked them what had happened and why they had not gone to the movie. They brushed him off and went to bed. A few days later, my father got his friend to tell him what happened. They were driving along a stretch of highway, and they noticed lights coming over a hill just ahead, where no lights should be, because there was nothing around for miles. Just at the base of the hill was a parking lot for a park. A bunch of cars were pulling into the parking lot to investigate the lights, so my father's friend pulled in too. Everyone got out of their cars and were about to start hiking to the top of the hill when a large disc with flashing lights rose above the hill's peak and emitted a loud, strange sound. Several cars got banged up and everyone's panicked to get away, thus the transfer of paint. My father's friends drove back to the base as fast as possible. A few days later, men in black suits showed up on the base looking for people. They talked to my father's friend and they sent him on his way. My father asked him what the men wanted to see him for. The men told the friend that he better shut up and say nothing about anything that happened if he wanted to keep his military career. Now that's creepy. Right there. The men in black, that whole idea is creepy. And when you start looking into it, it gets weirder and weirder because it's like, are they government agents like X-Files? Is it something more like what is it? In like Fringe, where it's like they are people from like the future and they're coming back to investigate us kind of and watch us and observe us? Is it something like they are connected with these UFOs? Maybe they're aliens. Sometimes they're described very robotically, and like they don't have like real faces or real like the face like it looks like it's painted on, or like their mouths aren't real, and like they ask for very strange things. Like there's this one where like they ask for a glass of water and they just look at the glass of water and they set it down. It's like, are you not going to drink the water? Like, what? This is so strange. But yeah, the whole idea of Men in Black is so interesting. It's so weird. There's so many people out there who have different like stories of them, and like when you start looking into them further, like when you look into like like Mothman and Point Pleasant and like the different Men in Black that appeared there, because they normally show up around when UFOs show up. So it's like, yeah, are they keeping tabs on us for the government? Are they like for their own purpose? I mean, who knows? I mean, this is just, it's so interesting when you hear that they show up in these different cases, and yeah, they're usually there to be like, you know, don't ever tell anyone what you saw. You didn't see what you saw. They try and make them like think like, oh, you didn't see what this is, type of stuff, and it's just so strange. It's so weird. The next tale is aliens came to see the comet. Back in the spring of 1997, a group of kids from my neighborhood were looking up at the night sky, observing the Hale-Bopp comet. After a while, we started to notice a red and white dot circling around each other, making sudden movements in every direction like no aircraft I have ever seen or have ever seen since. At one point, they merged into one craft, then shot out 3 smaller crafts, although we couldn't tell whether it was a craft because they just appeared to be balls of light. This went on for a couple of hours. Right before the lights disappeared, they accelerated at lightning fast speed into the darkness. We all went home terrified of what we saw. The next day, on the front page of our small hometown paper, it said it received several calls. The explanation they gave was the local airport was testing aircraft. To this day, whenever I see my friends that were there that night, we'll sometimes talk about it. None of us can be sure what we saw, but to this day, none of us have ever seen anything like it. And that's just even stranger too when there's multiple people seeing the same things that you're seeing. Like with the story with the sleepover, multiple people are seeing this. Multiple people are. So what are these phenomena? I mean, like he said, just he calls it a craft, but doesn't necessarily mean it was. Maybe they are just like kind of like cameras that are just sent out, like to scout us. I mean, I can speculate all day, but still, it just makes it weird because it's like, yeah, these people are just here to see like the comet, and then they see something even weirder, and you're just like, what? And then when you start like looking into it and you go to like the local paper, they say that they received multiple calls, so multiple people saw this, and then we get an answer that's like, oh, it was just us testing airplanes. Yeah. And it's like, what? I just love that now they're like, oh yeah, all those, not all of them, but a lot of the UFOs that we're seeing, we have no idea. Yeah, they're real. So why back then couldn't you just say like, hey guys, it's us, or it's not us, it's something else. The next story is called The Rural Visitor. As a kid back in the 80s, I was spending the night at my aunt and uncle's house, which was out in the sticks in Tennessee. I was sleeping on the couch and woke up due to a bright light coming through the kitchen window and into the living room. I was looking towards the light, which was white and slightly flickering. After about 10 minutes, I turned my head as it was now keeping me awake. After a few minutes, I turned my head back towards the light and was about to go to sleep on the love seat. I see a tall, dark figure standing between myself and the light. I was frozen and could not move or scream. It approached me, reached out, and began tapping on my forehead with what felt like a nail or something pointed. This went on another few minutes until I must have fallen or was put to sleep. I woke up the next morning to a quiet house. I go to the bathroom and have a red spot on my forehead, and the skin was slightly broken, but no blood. Now that's creepy. It's very creepy. That's so scary to think, like, to wake up and you just see something just standing there. And not only standing there, because you're frozen, right? You can't even, like, make a sound. And it just starts moving towards you. You're just stuck there. And then it does this where it, like, taps on your forehead. And then the next thing you know, you're awake. And it's morning. And what did it do? What was it doing when it did that? Like, what? It's so creepy to think, like, this happens. I mean, I'm not saying for sure that this happened to him, or maybe it did, or maybe he's experiencing something else, maybe sleep paralysis, or maybe somebody broke into the house. It could be many other things, but from his recollection, like, he saw this thing that he couldn't describe, obviously, because he doesn't describe it, and it does this to him, and it's just so bizarre when these things happen. And then especially, like, okay, so, like, he had a red spot on his forehead, and, like, and the skin was broken open, but there's, like, no blood. So what did it do? Did it take a sample of his blood or something? See, it's just so bizarre the way that these things operate sometimes. But, like, what do they want? What are they trying to get from us? This is going to be our last tale for the episode, and it's titled The Missing Hour. Driving in the UK from a friend's dinner party, we set off around 10 p.m. for a 15-minute drive home. There was myself, my wife in the front, and my 3 sons in the back of the car. We were driving near a USAF base in the southeast of England along a long straight piece of road when there was an incredible flash that the wife and I noticed. And it seemed to wake up one of our elder sons in the back. He would have been about 12 at the time. Something, I have no idea what, flew with absolute silence over the car. I saw it, my wife saw it, and the son in the back who was awakened by the flash saw it. Something flew right over us, so close you could touch it, and it was big. We got home, discussed it a bit, and concluded the flash was a flare from the USAF base, and the large object that flew over us may as well have been a Eurasian eagle owl. One had been spotted in the area. It was promptly forgotten. Fast forward just over a decade, and I and the son, who was awoken by the flash after talking about this weird event over dinner, when the youngest son, who didn't wake up during the event, tells us how he remembered it happening. He recalled an event that was vastly different from ours. He had never told us the story before. He thought it was a dream until we started talking about it. He described how the car had stopped when he saw the flash. We weren't moving, and the low-flying object sat on top of us for a few seconds, then flew off before the car started again. Apparently, I completely ignored the stop-start and simply continued driving. Now, here's the really cool bit that we had never realized. My wife had made arrangements to call her sister when we arrived home safely. We left at around 10 p.m. for a 15-minute drive. My wife called her sister around 11:45 p.m. to say we arrived home. I have no idea what happened that night. I was completely sober. My youngest son insists that something very odd happened. My wife is adamant that we took approximately 90 minutes to do a 15-minute drive. Her sister backs us up. I might not know what happened that night, but I am secure in the thought that something happened. Missing time is a very weird phenomenon. It's so strange to think, like, you can just be doing something one minute and then all of a sudden, like that, like 90 minutes is gone. What happened? And then the other son, the one of the younger sons saying that, like, oh, you guys, we paused, like time paused, and then the craft like flew off, and then time started again. It's so strange. All these stories today are very creepy, are very strange, are very out there, and that's what I love. I love about UFO stories. I mean, and it's just all paranormal, supernatural stories, because we're never going to know, right? It's the mystery of the thing. But sometimes we do find, like, the answers. And sometimes the answers can be, like, maybe it really was, he just had a dream when they were in the car, and then maybe it was just the U.S. Aircraft in the area, and, that's all it was. And maybe they left, and maybe they thought the time was one time, and then I don't know. See, the missing time part is the part that makes it very weird, and makes the story very interesting because you can kind of explain everything else away, but when you and someone outside, a third party, is confirming like, okay, yeah, but what happened to all that missing time? That's when it's weird. That's when it's strange. And you could chalk it up to, okay, maybe their clocks were wrong, maybe, the watches were off. But you can't not, I mean, all of them, all of the time pieces were off. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. All of them could be off. Everyone's watches, all the digital clocks could be off. The clocks at home could be off. Maybe they did take a detour and they thought it was like 15 minutes, but it was a little bit longer. But I don't think so. I think that sometimes high strangeness is very weird, and it distorts things. It'll distort time, it'll distort reality, and sometimes, we just got to go along with it. We're just here on this rock, along for the ride. So we just got to keep going day by day. And sometimes, it's just a normal mundane day where you're going to work, nothing happens. And the next you're seeing a light, there's a strange figure, and you're missing time. And that about does it for today's episode. If you have your own stories of unidentified flying objects or unidentified aerial phenomena, or whatever they're calling it now, or ghost stories, or stories of cryptids, or stories that are just unexplainable, something happening, it's just unexplainable, or you have something that you've written that's just fictional, love to hear it. You can always send that to us at Gmail. So it's horrorboxpodcast@gmail.com. Always look there to try and see if anybody sent me anything. And then you can always send recommendations through there too as well. You can also send me a DM on Instagram. We're at Horrorbox Podcast. And, I always try and check there. You can send something through Twitter. That's at HorrorboxPod. Try and keep up with socials. I'm so bad at it, guys. So if I'm not updating all the time, you can always message me and say, hey, like, what's an update? Or what are we going to get next? Hopefully it'll help, especially if you poke and prod, it'll help to get me to like, oh, okay, cool. Let me post more about this. Let me tell you guys what's coming up next. I'm going to do the third episode of our Friday the 13th. So there's 2 more episodes. The third one will be next, and then the last one will be after that. Hopefully I'll be able to get some more in but just before Halloween, and then we'll start getting into Halloween, the series after that. That'll be interesting, especially because there's so many different timelines, and not only that, but just so many different movies now. And then we'll get into when Halloween Ends comes out. So, guys, like I said, follow on all the socials. So Twitter, Instagram, you can email. Just let me know. What do you guys want to hear? What do you want me to talk about next? Like, I love talking about all things spooky, all things horror, all things creepy. Just let me know what you guys want to hear, and I'll try and get you guys as much as I can. Till next time, guys, we'll see what comes out from the horror box.